Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for the 20th of November. All right, now, you can almost think it's Groundhog Day, but there has been a few little movements, not many, but a couple to notice is the euro finally sort of popping above 114.20 now. That's a break above the hourly and also pushes above the daily charts on the euro. So gives it more of a mildly bullish tone than it did have yesterday. Sterling, as you can see, still continuing to trade sideways. The market is very cautious about anything on sterling at this point, so that continues. The Aussie slowly drifted lower yesterday, as did the Kiwi. Kiwi come down and tested that support trend line just above 68, but at this stage still remains in a bullish sort of framework. Dollar yen has drifted another 30 or 40 points lower, and that's put it into a mildly bearish sort of format sentiment at the moment. Dollar Swiss is like euro, one of the big movers, broke down through sort of 10030. Now it's sort of basically in a very bearish technical setup. So out of the dollar pairs, it's got the biggest bearish pair. Dollar CAD has brushed aside all the US dollar sort of drift lower situation, and it's now sort of just trading sideways, whilst the dollar index itself continues to pressure the downside. We've got support here at the moment around 96.10. So this is pretty key to the next big step for the dollar. Now, there's been no dollar news. If anything, you come across and have a look at the where the dollar is and what other factors are impacting it, and you'll see that the a bit of a drift off in the equity market once again. And I'll show you the news shortly after this. But basically, the US equities taking a pretty good pace. Look at the Nasdaq down over 3%. The Dow Jones down 1.5, and the S&P 500 down 1.66. So that's going to put a negative tone, you would think, across the board here on global equity markets. And if I just having a look at the dollar index, as you can see, it's still sort of in this range, overall long-term daily range, or like sideways daily range. But if this breaks down here, we're going to start to see all the technicals for the US dollar, all of them on all time frames, turn down. And that's going to be a very bearish sentiment for the dollar. That's factoring in the Fed. Those Fed officials coming in at the same time, talking about potential global growth dropping. You put all the pieces together, this could be a nice dollar sell-off running into the year's end. The dollar yuan, the offshore Chinese yuan, dollar yuan, sort of still trading sideways, but starting to sort of gyrate in a pretty big band here, 691 to probably 694. Really undecided here. We are still waiting to hear, but it looks like to me, from what I've read, that the pressure on China with the tariffs may be eased off if they come back and do some sort of deal, which you would probably expect. And that's what Trump's been aiming towards with all these tours and fros. It's about getting China to the table and doing a deal. So that's where we are at the moment. Pressure on the dollar index. Now, when you come over here, just check out the as I said, always check the news. Find out what's causing things to move. Now, one of the key things is looking at the dollar declines. This is a bit of a groundhog day from yesterday. So nothing really happened yesterday. So the news-wise regurgitate what they had from the previous day. Now, they're saying, the dollar's drifting lower. Euro and sterling are slowly climbing, which push pressure on the downside of the dollar index. But the Fed officials talking is a story, and you need to be aware that this could be more than just a couple of Fed officials just yapping. They may be doing the handiwork for the chairman. Brexit, obviously, always going to remain the headlines until we get a deal. And then you come over here, there's a little story down here, which is the main catalyst. And this is always good to know what's pushing, they say the various markets around, like equities. Now, there's a big sell-off in Wall Street. Apple and internet stocks got belted, right? And this is also coming back into all those, I don't know what you call them, basically high risk speculators on Bitcoin. As it starts to fall, people are working out that hasn't really translated. The big thing about Bitcoin, as we all knew, was the blockchain, the technology behind it, not the actual coin itself. But who am I to argue? It's still worth a few $1,000, $5,000. Now, dollar CAD edges lower as trade tensions weigh on risk appetite. So basically, dollar CAD is into a sideways moving mode. But what you want to take out of basically this page is, it's a reiteration of the Fed officials, Brexit. So these two things are just a drag on from yesterday. What's causing the dollar to drift lower? Well, it's hard to say. You know, as equity markets usually come off, you would get the dollar sort of rallying somewhat, you know, with that safe haven play. It hasn't happened yet. So something is out of whack. So to me, the fact that the equities are down 1.5% to 3% across the board, you know, that should have been a bit of dollar strength, and we haven't seen it. So the market is not normal at the moment. Signals to me trading conditions are not very good at all. Okay, now if I just come back into the MyFX Trading Hub. Now, as I said, there isn't a huge amount of change. If anything, Euro has popped up, which has, of course, helped dollar Swiss move lower. On the major pairs, the slight change here in sentiment, mildly bullish for the Euro. Okay, it was a bit sideways yesterday. Aussie and Kiwi maintain the same sentiment. Dollar yen went from a sideways to a mildly bearish on a technical aspect. Dollar Swiss, all time frames are heading lower. So to me, that's where you can see what the dollar is doing, right? The US dollar index, don't forget, it's against a basket of currencies, mainly sterling and euro, making up the majority of that. So you take out those two, what's the dollar doing? I'll tell you what, it's going down, and that's against dollar Swiss, which is, you know, the most neutral pair. Dollar CAD has brushed off all those weak US dollar woes. It's sideways, and the dollar index, like the daily charts are moving lower, but they haven't broken down yet, and it's right there on that support line on the hourly. So it's mildly bearish at the moment, not fully into a bearish mode, but just keep an eye on it as we go forward. And this is where you really need, we've got all these pairs, right? You've got all these pairs with peripheral direction, and they're the ones with mildly bullish or mildly bearish. They're not really, they're sort of moving that way, but not aggressively. What you want to be doing is try and piece it together and work out where that next move is going to come from. And that's where it comes back down to the economic numbers. Right? So the Aussie today, it's probably going to be in the spotlight now. In just over half an hour, we've got the RBA minutes. To me, the statement from the RBA last week was very positive without saying anything about interest rates. So we may see some more details in the minutes. I think it's a bit early to be talking about interest rate hikes in Australia, but don't forget those employment numbers, those really strong numbers on Thursday were before the meeting. So they're not even going to be a part of the discussion. Then coming into the early European session, the RBA governor is speaking. You may get some sort of activity there. We've got building permits and housing numbers out of the US. Don't forget, Thanksgiving Thursday, this is going to be a short week. So any US dollar numbers, because the US dollar index is sitting right on support, any sort of weakness on these numbers will be enough to push it over the edge. Okay, so just keep an eye on that. And then we've also got the Governor Council member Wilkins, like second in charge for the Bank of Canada. What she says could rattle the CAD, although it is into a very neutral sideways movement at the moment. And that pretty much rules off Tuesday's trading. Okay, not a hell of a lot to go on. The major currency pairs, if I just bring you back to those, not a huge amount to sort of really work with, if you ask me. Let me just get that up. If anything, you've got, you know, the standout to me is really the way that dollar or euro has slowly clawed its way back. The Italians coming back to the table is a very good bit of a boost for euro. Now, if that changes and Italy say, no, we're not doing anything, well, then euro is going to fall straight down like a lead balloon. But at this stage, it is enjoying a nice move to the top side, more on the fact that the dollar index is drifting lower, right? That's the main part of it. And, well, sterling, Brexit, and could go anywhere. Could go 200 points up, could go 200 points down, or it could just jump around all over the place like it is. So that's pretty much where we are, guys. Just keep it on dollar Swiss. This is, to me, a bit of it's an early lead into what the dollar is going to be doing, and it's down, right? So you're looking at these pairs. I'm starting to prepare myself for opportunities to get long some of these other pairs against the dollar. And the dollar yen, it's been a long time since we've seen this thing go below 112. It would be a nice sort of clean out there. And don't expect too much out of dollar CAD at this point until Wilkins speaks. All right, guys, that's it from me. A little bit to digest. Not a hell of a lot of movement across the board, but, you know, we've got plenty of activity coming out this week. All right, guys, we'll catch you later on. See you in the 247 trade zone. Cheerio.